What is up, everybody? First of all, happy Christmas Eve to everybody out there. Everybody's watching it, anybody who's listening. We got a really, really cool show for you today. Admittedly, I had the day off. It's Christmas Eve. Want to have a little fun. So me and the gang from the Off the Ball Sports Network are going to talk about the year that was 2020. And believe it or not, there's only 7 days left. I think most people are glad there's only 7 days left. It was one of them. I can't say it's got to be without a doubt the craziest year of my lifetime, one of the most unique years in history. But today is about having fun, looking at the sports side of it. We're going to talk about the best teams of the year. We're going to talk about our favorite players of the year. We're going to talk about our favorite moments of the year. We're going to talk about some of the fresh faces of 2020 in the sports world that, kind of caught everybody by storm. And then we'll talk about maybe some of the social media, some of the tweets and stuff when we get down to it. So first of all, I would thanks crew for being on. Merry Christmas Eve. And
thanks for having us, man. Merry Christmas.
No, you guys are the best. It's good to have you on here. We got Stephen Gillespie from Breaking the Game. We got Jurg and Coney. Did I pronounce your last name right, Jurg?
You got it.
Thank you. We got Jelani Brown for What the Game Means to Me, and we got the press, Chris LeBron from Off the Ball Pod. Chris and Steven both are doing shows on Dash Radio. There's so much going on right now. We're all doing stuff. Jelani's podcast is hitting. Jurg's putting out a ton of content. So this should be a fun show, and I've got some really smart guys on here to talk about it. So thanks for being on, guys.
I don't know about all that.
Happy to be on. Happy to be on.
Thanks for having us, brother.
Yeah, you guys are the best. We're just gonna have some fun today. We're gonna try some video segments here in a second, but let's just get into it. 2020 was mad. It still is. The sports world was a little crazy. Like, we kind of lost college basketball. That went by the wayside. The NBA took a huge layoff. Baseball took a giant gap in the middle, and then they came back. With a different, to finish their season. I mean, nothing's been normal. And the NBA bubble, came back in like July after, a few month layoff. It's been nuts. So this is the calendar year of 2020. It's hard to think back that it started with, college football playoffs. And then, now here we are a week from college football playoffs. Like, it's been a long year and a short year all at the same time. So, let's talk about teams. Let's talk about the teams of 2020. Now, everybody keep in mind when you're watching Off the Ball, we're giving you our perspective. That's what we do. So, like, our teams may not be like what the standard that you think they are, and that's what you've come to love from us. So, let's start with Chris LeBron. Let's start with your team or teams of 2020.
Okay, so my team of 2020 is the New York Knicks. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously not.
I would not be surprised.
No. I wouldn't do that. But this was tough. It came down to three teams. But to me, it came down to Lakers, Dodgers. But to me, the team of the year is the LSU Tigers.
Oh, wow.
That's a good one.
They had arguably the greatest season of all time. Joe Burrow had arguably the greatest season by a quarterback of all time. Maybe the greatest 1 year. This is a guy who we didn't, struggled the year before and was a transfer from Ohio State. We wasn't sure, how he would fit, in LSU. And then boom, takes off, has a tremendous year, and then caps it off with dismantling Clemson in the national championship. So. Yeah. To me, LSU had the most dominant year. I mean, the Lakers are up there too. The Dodgers are up there, finally breaking that. It kind of felt like they were going to be the Buffalo Bills of the 90s, constantly getting there and losing. They had a lot of pressure to win it, so they capped it off. But to me, LSU had the most dominant year, in 2020 out of all the, the sports teams to win championships. So I'm going to go with the LSU Tigers as my team of the year.
It's hard to argue that. Jurg, team of the year.
So I'm going to go a little bit unconventional to what most would, because there are two specific teams that I'm almost certain are going to get mentioned by the others. And I'm going to go with a team that I think deserves a lot of credit for the way they perform, and that would be the Tampa Bay Lightning in the NHL. It's funny that Chris mentioned the Dodgers as being, one of those talented teams that it looked like they were never going to win. because it was actually going to look like that with the Tampa Bay Lightning as well. The Tampa Bay Lightning, since 2015, have been the most well-run organization in hockey. Consistently being a Stanley Cup contender year in and year out is very difficult in hockey, where sometimes a team will have a 3-year window and then it'll be another 5 years until they can get back. The way that they were continuing to keep their roster going for all these years was big, and that gave them expectations. And in the 2019 playoffs, when they lost in the first round as the best team, not only in that regular season, as the greatest team of all time.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, they got swept after leading the league in points and having the greatest regular season in modern NHL history. I love a good redemption story. They came back. They beat the team that beat them out last year in the Columbus Blue Jackets in 5 games. They beat the Boston Bruins in 5. They beat a very strong Islanders team, and then they win the Stanley Cup in 6, cementing themselves as a great team and making sure they don't fall into the category of like those Buffalo Bills or other talented teams that could never win. I got to give them credit. I love a good redemption story. That's my favorite thing in sports. So I got to give them that.
Yeah. It's funny because, I live in Ohio and I know a lot of Blue Jackets fans. So I don't happen to be one, but you're right. That was a big deal. And I think they're deserving. They had one of the quietest, greatest 2020 championships, that we've ever seen for sure.
Their run was great because in the 25 playoff games they played, 15 of those games they scored at least 3 goals or more. They were an absolute offensive dynamo. They had like a 7-goal game and an 8-goal game in there. They were fun to watch.
A juggernaut, an absolute juggernaut. Yeah, that's for sure. And, we got to think, you shouldn't think back too far, but it was also like we didn't even know if we were going to get sports. And then they pulled their bubble off just as well as the NBA did. It wasn't as touted, but man, they did a fantastic job up there. So heck yeah, Tampa Bay Lightning. Great jerseys too. I'm sorry. I like Lightning jerseys for some.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Cause when they, those hockey teams came out, those expansion teams came out, Ohio didn't have a team. So we just kind of gravitated to whoever. So like I had Tampa Bay Lightning shirt, you know what I mean? Like things like that. Cause it's like, why not, so, but that's cool. Steven, team of the year.
Yes, sir. And you guys kind of danced around it. I'll go ahead and be the guy to tackle some low-hanging fruit. I got the Los Angeles Lakers, I think, are the best team, based on coming into the season. They finished number 1 in the Western Conference, obviously. In order for them to make the finals, you have to do that, right? They pulled off gentlemen sweeps all the way to the finals. The Miami Heat gave them 2 games instead of 1. And even still, it felt like everyone was kind of speaking more on, hey, like the Miami Heat are actually a really good team, because they didn't want to just talk about the Los Angeles Lakers the entire time, because we saw with our own eyes that they were just too much for Miami to handle. It just felt like we constantly needed to be reassured that, like, hey, this is a good Miami Heat team. Hey, this is and rightfully so. I actually picked them, to beat the Bucks. I said I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up making the Eastern Conference, championship game and even winning that. But going back to the Lakers, they were 52-19. They, new head coach in Frank Vogel, new cast of characters around them. You look at their points per game, they were 113.4, which was 11th best in the NBA, 4th best in opponents' points per game at 107.6. Their offensive rating was 11th in the NBA. Their defense was 3rd. They were actually only expected to win 48 games on the season. So you talk about how well, LA did compared to expectations. If you look at last season's GM survey, a lot of people, including myself, I'm not a GM though, right? Pick the Los Angeles Clippers. Actually, like 46% of all GMs expected the Clippers to win last season. And the expected win total for the Lakers actually reflected that. They were 5th. They were expected to have the 5th most wins in the NBA, because a lot of people were like, okay, LeBron James is on this team. He's just going to kind of coast, make the playoffs, and then he'll turn it up. No, the Lakers were the best team in the West. They were the best team in their division, and ultimately ended up winning a ring in a season that really meant a lot to the Los Angeles Laker community at large.
So I'll get Jelani's team, and then we'll talk about the Lakers a little bit. I mean, I think it'd be crazy not to. So Jelani, who was your 2020 team of 2020?
Yeah, so mine, I guess, disclaimer before I even go into it, my pretty much all my categories are going to be kind of dedicated to women's. I think it was a big year for women in sports in general. So pretty much like everything that I'm going to be talking about, besides maybe the tweets, it's going to be dedicated more so towards women. So my best team of 2020 was the Seattle Storm. And I think people that did watch the WNBA, it's hard to argue against that. They pretty much swept through. They pretty much swept through every opponent that faced them. Even with their in the WNBA finals last game, I think they won like 92 to like 59 against the Los Angeles Ace that were pretty heavily favored coming into the year. Even I had them as favorite because just all the weapons that they have on their team. But it was just big overall, Brianna. Yeah, stacked. And I was so sad Angel McCutcheon from my, of course, Atlanta Dream went over there and bobbed out. But in general, what Brianna Stewart came back from Achilles injury. She had herself a big year. I think in the I don't know if it's overall or just in the NBA finals, she averaged like 9, but just shy of 20 points per game. I think like 8 rebounds and then a block, a steal, and I think like 4 assists. Sue Bird, of course, is a legend. There's no more that you really got to say about that. And it is overall just the team performance. And for them, just the same thing that we've been talking about with the NBA. Really, they were I guess like the catalyst, pretty much the blueprint as well, like for the NBA, because like a lot of the things that they did and instilled, pretty much the NBA took hold of as well. Like the nicknames on the back of the jersey and the different sayings on the court, Black Lives Matter and all that. So I definitely feel like that WNBA as a whole, they definitely need their flowers and deserve their recognition. So the Seattle Storm would be the team of the year.
I think that's a great choice, man. And we can't deny. I mean, 2020, like everything, like. You got to look at all the serious parts of it too, man. The WNBA, they really stuck their necks out there and really led the charge and didn't back down from critics and everything with the real world stuff. And they play a great game. They're kind of they're basically fearless. You know what I mean? They're what we would want out of athletes. So I like that pick, to be honest with you. I wish I'd have watched more of them. Like looking back, I caught a few games there towards the end, but wonderful season, wonderful bubble from them too. So good job. So mine was actually, and it wasn't more I kind of took my takes from more of like just how I felt like it. Kind of like me, like kind of the water cooler talk, like the gut feelings and stuff. And I couldn't decide. I actually went with the Miami Heat, and because I thought that like the Lakers, I knew were going to be great. We know LeBron, and maybe it's just because like just where I live and everything. Like I won't say I appreciate everything LeBron and them did, but something about the Heat in that playoff run. They played. They surprised everybody with the series. I think Jimmy Butler came off as we've talked about it before, like really just like exploded onto like an actual like superstar, but like the people could finally like get a hold of, you know what I mean? Like we learned more about Jimmy Butler as a player, as a person. We heard more from him. They made that run and, there's a lot more anti-Celtic stuff. So then when you had the Celtic series and all that, and I just thought the Miami Heat just, with the rookies, they came in, one of the lower seeds, just everything they did, I thought was just really fun. And I always look at it from like the viewpoint of like, I think there are kids that are watching that are like, I like this team, I mean, like there's a lot of kids that like Hero for whatever reason, or any of the things that happen, Jimmy Butler's he's not LeBron, you know what I mean? It's easy. We can see what LeBron does. We can see what like Durant does. Jimmy Butler, like you can't quite see what he does to make a team great. So I always think it's cool when like young people get to see guys like that, like do it a little different way, but still get to like a really high level. So I picked the Miami Heat just because it was just so much fun to watch, and they made you care more about the bubble or whatever. So that was my team of 2020. But let's talk about the Lakers for a second before we move on to players here. I mean, we all know that was how we had this debate a while back, but maybe somebody hadn't heard. How big was that championship considering everything in 2020? Like it's always been a debate. Was it worse or was it easier? Was it easier or more difficult? Like that's the debate. What do you guys think?
Well, so this is going to kind of touch on real quick, Jeff, to one of my best moments. I don't know if we can. I know that you had a structure settled, but my best moment for this season was the Kobe Bryant Memorial. Just the ceremony that was given, in honor and recognition of his achievements on and off the court. And, that ties directly into how much this championship meant to the Lakers organization. You look at, the Lakers aren't starved for accolades or recognition or anything like that. But, you consider the drought that they just went through, it's just typically just another day at the office for a lot of our teams, right? But for the Lakers, that was a big stretch. It was a long stretch where they really weren't that relevant. Obviously, the tragedy where, Kobe and his daughter, and everybody else that was in the helicopter passed away. On top of that, David Stern passed away this season too. So the basketball community was hurting this year, right? And then COVID happens right after that. And we don't know if there's going to be a season, and not only that, but the LeBron baggage that he brings with him to no matter what team he goes to, he's got to live up to insurmountable expectations to a lot of people. So all of that just culminating together into one season, going down to a bubble that's never happened in the NBA before, playing in a scenario, in a situation where it's kind of, danged if you do, danged if you don't. They went ahead and won it anyway. Gentleman sweep all the way up to the finals until it was a little bit extra of a gentleman sweep there. It meant a lot to, just as a basketball fan, just going through that stretch of the season where we didn't have basketball for a little while. We didn't know if we were going to have it back again. Appreciating a player like LeBron James and what he brings to the game. And then, obviously honoring the memory of Kobe Bryant.
Oh, yeah, sure. What do you think, Chris? What kind of championship was it? How will we look back on 2020 Lakers?
I think we're going to look back at it, the Lakers, as, their road to the finals is arguably, one of the most difficult in sports history because of just the surroundings and just you're playing in front of no crowd. I mean, that affects you. You could feed off a crowd if you're down 10, 15 points, and like that crowd energy can get you back in the game, and not having that. And then the family aspect, like not being around your family I know towards the end, when teams started getting eliminated, you can have a certain amount, but, not be able to go home and, decompress after a loss or a win and have your family around you. Now you go into a hotel room and you're not really allowed to do much. That can affect you. And I think that was a big factor in this. So to me, this was a very difficult championship. I don't put an asterisk on this or anything.
No.
To me, the Lakers won the championship fair and square. Everyone else had the same circumstances to go through. So it's not like they had an advantage or disadvantage. Everyone had the same circumstances. And to me,
they went in without players too. Like they went in without an Avery Bradley and others,
Yeah. And, so to me, this was a difficult championship, and just like the whole season was just all out of whack. I mean, let's face it started off with an absolute tragedy in losing Kobe. I mean, that devastated that franchise. Kobe is the Lakers, and that it kind of added a little bit more pressure in that, that way too. And in a way also, because now you got LeBron was on a mission. Hey, I got to do this for Kobe, and that added pressure on top of LeBron James being the de facto best player in the league and everyone expecting him to win the championship with AD and all that. That's a lot of pressure. And then, like I said, the circumstance of COVID and everything in the bubble. And it's not like they played scrub teams still. They played some good teams. Portland, everyone was talking about Portland. They were playing hot. They had the bubble game. Boom. They kind of dismantled Portland, we talk about Houston, right? Houston's game one. Houston's on a hot streak. Boom. They take care of Houston in the gentleman sweep. Then Denver. Denver just came back to back 3-1, down 3-1, and they just beat the team that everyone thought was the team that, was going to beat the Lakers or could beat the Lakers, and they take care of them in 5. And then they play Miami in the finals, have a hard-fought 6-game series, and come off and win the championship. So, to me, we're going to look back at this Lakers team as one of the most interesting seasons, but definitely one of the toughest for sure. Especially in modern day sports. I don't think we're going to go, see anything like this ever again. So,
I hope not.
definitely kudos to the Lakers. Yeah, and we hope not to. Hopefully, as the months and weeks go by, things will get better. But kudos to the Lakers for what they did, because that just wasn't easy to do. So, shout out to the Lakers for doing a hell of a job and winning the championship and doing for Kobe. That was dope.
Yeah, it was crazy. So Jurg, you're a hockey guy. Same question. Is the Tampa Bay Lightning, is that championship viewed as just as legit as the rest of them in that community?
I from everything I'm gathering, and you'll get like the one or two people in comment sections that try to mess around with it, but I equate everything that Chris and Steven just explained for the Lakers. It applies to Tampa Bay as well. When the environment is in a state where everyone has the same advantages and disadvantages, you can't blame anything as to, well, this team got this edge, this team didn't have this, aside from missing maybe a player or two. Mm-hmm. But from my knowledge, throughout the most part, a lot of the teams that made it to the NHL playoffs had their best players. Chicago had Patrick Kane. Tampa Bay's captain, Steven Stamkos, actually, he missed a majority of the playoffs. So if you're considering it from a player standpoint, they were missing a guy who's going to make the Hall of Fame one day, and that's a big deal. And that environment, like, and with hindsight as well as what we've heard since, like, there's a reason the NBA and the NHL have said they're going to play in their arenas again. There's a reason when very early in the NFL season, when the question of a bubble was coming up, the NFL players were simply put like, no, we are not going to a bubble. Because the mental toll that takes, like Chris said, after a win or a loss, normally you can go home, you can go see your family, with your significant other and your kids. These guys, they got to go back to a hotel room where even if you FaceTime your family, we have some dads in this chat. It's a massive difference between talking to your kid through the phone and then being able to actually be with them in person. Yeah. So
I can actually, if you don't mind, just real quick, just for folks who don't know, I'm in the Navy and I serve on submarines. So like I can relate a lot to what these players went through in the aspect where like I go and live in a hole, for, several months, and there's stretches where I don't hear from my family at all, and I do the same thing every day, and I can't go to the places that typically I would want to go. I can't do the things I want to do, like no internet. I can't eat the food that I want to eat. Like, the food that we have is not the best. It's not terrible. Maybe that's Stockholm syndrome talking. I don't know. But like you typically just do the same thing every day. And I bring that up to say, like, I'm not one of these guys that's like, oh, I can do it, they can do it. I'm one of those guys that brings up, I've gone through it. I know maybe, and you could argue maybe it's a little worse than what they went through, but even still, like, I wouldn't want to wish that on anybody who doesn't have to go through that. You know what I mean? It's not fun. It does take a toll on you mentally. You miss the people that you can't see. You miss doing the things that you can't do, eating the food you want, like all that stuff. It's not fun. So like for anybody who thinks that they just went vacationing at Disney, like they were basically trapped in paradise. They get to look at all the stuff that they couldn't do. You know what I mean? So.
It was definitely mentally tough on them. What do you think, Jelani? What do you think about the championship? We'll just bottle up all the teams that won in 2020 under the difficult circumstances. You validate everything good.
Yeah, there's pretty much Chris Jurg and Steven said there's. Oh, I'm good. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just saying, reiterating everything that Jurg, Steven, and Chris said. Yeah, there's nothing to take away from these players whatsoever. You said, Jurg said it perfectly. Everyone has the same advantages. Everyone has the same disadvantages. There's like pretty much like you said, just mentally there was so much that was going on this year. Like I said, even with the Lakers starting off with the Lakers, like losing Kobe. Everybody's going through a pandemic that we've never seen before. We've never experienced before, and hopefully, hopefully we don't have to really go through that again in our lifetime. And it's still ongoing. Like I say, it's not like everything just shut off.
Right.
Like, NBA just started back 2 days ago, and they still having to deal with the same things. Yeah. Vaccines coming in or whatever. But we still don't know. It's still
and then
like
the social injustice
everything.
Too.
Exactly. Yeah. That's just about to touch on. You have the social injustice, like the movement, like certain players opting out for that specific reason, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and some still like wanting to fight through it and fight for it in the middle of playing through. Like, as we saw, there was a point that Milwaukee walked off the floor, they didn't play their game, and then everybody else stood with them in solitude, and it was a possibility everybody was just about to go home, but of course they talked it over and
yeah,
out.
that's a different show, but I think we were closer to that than we may know. But that's a different, probably a different show for a different time. But I was I got nervous, but to wrap it up, I admire the athletes I am not a guy that thinks just because they make more money than the average person or whatever, they have all these luxuries. I do not count that against people, because you still have systems, you have programs that you do. I mean, these guys have dietitians, they have all these things. And then when, you put that in a blender, it really is mentally taxing. And then I don't care who you are. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care what you have. I don't care what your house looks like. You miss your family. That's tough. All the athletes that fought through it, I was impressed by, and I give full validation to every championship they won. So,
oh yeah, for sure.
So now we'll have a little fun. Let's move on to the players of 2020. And then we're just going to talk about just what players had the best 2020. They don't have to be we're not looking for the MVP. We're looking for who won 2020. So, you know what? I'm going to start off with this one real quick. Chris kind of stole my thunder. No, I'm just kidding. I was actually glad he brought it up. I know it's crazy, and because he only played in college, he played 2 games in 2020, but I got Joe Burrow. So he jumped out because it's easy to forget now what a phenom he was, by the time he won the championship. Chris touched on it. It was amazing. The greatest run we've ever seen by a college player, everything you can say. And I know, and then for LSU, he only played 2 games in 2020. So he played 2 games in 2020 for LSU, had 956 yards and 12 touchdowns in 2020.
Against good teams too,
Again,
great teams.
We're talking that would be an average, Big Ten quarterback for this whole season. He did it in 2 games against the best competition anybody could face. So, and then he was just a rocket ship, coming out, and he was having a really good season with Cincinnati, and he was, number 1 pick, doing everything right, star of the franchise. So I think Joe Burrow has had a really great 2020. So that was.
I love his story though. His story is great. All the adversity.
I may not love it as much as you, Chris.
No, but just the fact that a lot of kids we see go bouncing from school to school may you will never hear about them again. How many 5 stars I've seen go bouncing around, you never hear about them again. And then Joe, had dealt what he did at Ohio State, and then takes a chance at LSU, and going into the season, probably a 5th, 6th round pick, and then he elevated all the way to the number 1 pick. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, no. So what I mean by that is he knocked my son out of the playoffs twice. So,
so that's different then.
Got a bit of a sting, but everything you said's right. But I had to watch it in person. It was tough, and we fought him. Believe me,
personal.
We took it.
Michael Jordan, yes.
His junior year, we had the lead in overtime, and he beat us. That was a tough night, but you're right. He wasn't a 5-star. He wasn't a 5-star can't miss quarterback coming out of high school. I mean, he was really, really good. He's just he's only from an hour away. We played the last time we played him was probably 10 minutes from my house. You know what I mean? So but no, it's a great story. He's had a great 2020. So that's mine. So let's go to Jelani. Who's your player of 2020?
Player of 2020, like I said, I'm gonna stay on track with. I kind of mentioned it earlier already, but Breonna Stewart, just coming back from an Achilles injury, and to perform the way she did throughout the entire season without any hiccups or let-ups, and again everything that we've been talking about through social injustice. She even, I believe, she was the reason I guess they started putting. Or she made the suggestion to put the Black Lives Matter and everything on, or say her name on the court as well. So I think I said earlier, but her stats, I think these were for the final, or no, this was overall, I think for the season. Fortunately, she didn't win MVP. Asia Wilson did, but she deserved it just as much as anybody as well. But 19 and 7 points per game, 8.3 rebounds, 3.6 assists, 1.7 steals, 1.3 blocks. She just had a incredible season, amazing season, and a comeback season. Like I said, we kind of seeing it now, even though you know, I guess with doctors and technology and stuff, like we're now able to see like the Achilles injury, even though, you know, it takes a year for everybody to, or for you to, you know, rehab and everything and, you know, get back into form. And so we just seen it the other night, KD's performing, you know, incredible. So,
yeah,
like,
I can tell you as an old guy, and I'm being serious, like growing up, like that was a career ender instantly.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say.
I mean, it wasn't even a doubt. I can remember when players started coming back from those and being like, what is, like, nobody can do this. Nobody can do this. Nobody can do this. And so to watch KD, you know, Brianna, you talked about watch KD the other night, still in my mind, I'm like, it makes, like, I'm so nervous the entire time. We just had a kid for Ohio State. He did, I think it was game 1 or 2 of the year. So, but yeah, it is amazing. And she's a true leader too.
Exactly.
I don't think you can say enough good things about her. Really needed her. That's somebody we need in 2020, man.
She's
it's really
definitely the face, or one of the faces that's coming up in the WNBA. And then when, you know, of course, Sue Bird retires whenever I guess she wants to retire, you know, she's next in line to take that role. So
hopefully Sabrina Ionescu takes that role too.
Oh yeah, as your New York Liberty, yeah. She looked strong the first few games of the year, so I think the WNBA in general is just in good hands.
It is. It's successful, and these are the women, the players that they're going to look back on in 50 years, like we look back on now with, like, you know, the guys that, like, say George Mikan. You know what I mean? Like when George Mikan was playing, it wasn't like it is now, but we can look back.
Not even.
we can look back and equate it.
The world changed a lot since Mikan.
Right.
People discovered they could dribble the ball with their other hand. George Mikan.
It's like in Jackie Moon movie, Semi-Pro.
Oh yes,
and they're like, "What is that? Like traveling?" No. That's how much the world.
Oh my god.
Oh man. All right, Jerk. Who's your player 2020?
So, oh man, quite a few guys.
It's tough, man.
Had some really good years. I'm gonna go with a guy that, again, an underrated guy from, you know, a sport that doesn't always get its due sometimes, especially nowadays with cable cutting and all that. But Mookie Betts had the 2020. First off, the most obvious, helping lead the LA Dodgers to their World Series win, getting it for this core group of guys. A special shout out, of course, Clayton Kershaw finally getting the ring on his Hall of Fame resume. But man, Mookie Betts had a year being traded from the Red Sox, getting paid by the LA Dodgers.
Hand over fist, bro.
Yeah, hand over fist. It was an immediate thing too, because a lot of people, both while we were waiting for what was going to happen with Major League Baseball, a lot of people were scared. Like, well, if the MLB season doesn't happen, this voids a year in the contract. What if Mookie Betts just got traded? The Dodgers gave up all that, and he doesn't play. You know, there was that whole like idea going out there. Like, what if the Dodgers
mental gymnastics?
Yeah. Like people were trying to make up this whole thing. Like, what if the Dodgers get really screwed over here? Obviously, we had a Major League Baseball season. Mookie Betts agreeing to stay in LA, being the difference. He had some highlight plays throughout the playoffs and the season.
Oh yeah,
helping them. And at the end of the day, you know, we alluded to the idea of it when we were talking about the Lakers, but in Los Angeles, to be relevant, you got to win, and especially a championship. And for him bringing a championship his first year in that city, I'm sure brings a lot of fans there. Whenever fans will eventually come back. Brought a lot more
other players.
Baseball.
Clayton Kershaw.
Yeah, exactly. So Mookie Betts had a heck of a 2020, both personally and the impact that he made on an organization. So
absolutely.
That's a solid pick, dude.
Super solid pick. And
Go ahead, Johnny.
I was just gonna say super solid because even though I'm not really an Atlanta Braves fan, I did want to root for him, of course, because this city's just yearning for a championship. And if he didn't make some of those leaping catches, I feel like would have been right there in the playoffs. And
he was on my list for all reasons, so I'm glad that somebody put him on there.
Dude, outside of Mike Trout, is he not the best player in baseball right now?
Hands down, has to be top two. It might not be two.
It was fun to watch. Chris, you up? It looks like you got muted.
Yeah.
Player 2020.
Yeah. Player 2020. I'm gonna go with the king. I'm gonna go with LeBron James. Like I said before, we kind of talked about it earlier with the stuff he had to go through and the pressure of, you know, the pressure of last year, like not making the playoffs, you know, and the pressure of being a Laker and you're not really a Laker until you win a championship. Like,
I think that was a big part of
Several
it.
championships. Like this is just the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
a big part of it.
but
Yeah.
at least winning a championship to be, considered a great Laker, and to be considered a Laker, period.
Mhm.
So to
Yep.
me, LeBron, and obviously everything else, like we mentioned before, and he and everything he did with social justice and the movement, getting people to vote, was a huge, was all that was huge, and he was probably the leader in that, dealing with all the crap he had to deal with, certain people in charge and all that, and like you said, just being the face of the league still at 35 years old, still doing what he's able to do. And like I said, all the circumstances, to me, LeBron, is definitely my player of the year. And I have another consideration. I wanted to put Naomi Osaka, because she had a hell of a year too. She was in the running too. But I'll give it to the King.
Guys, I mean, you can't go wrong with that choice. It's weird to recognize that when you're like Brady's like this too. It's like when a legend is actually still playing the game at a high level is such a rare thing. You know what I mean? Like if LeBron retires a few years ago, like he's still a legend. You know what I mean? But like if Kobe did it, towards the end of his career, it's like you're on the court with somebody as a legend. That's an odd thing. And for LeBron to do that and win a championship, you can't go right. He had a pretty good 2020. All right, Steven, who you got?
Well, yeah, I'm actually surprised, and I'm not discrediting any of the other names mentioned, but I'm just surprised that Patrick Mahomes was not brought up yet.
To be honest, I'll be perfectly
I figured he would
honest.
be.
Perfectly honest, I went first because I assumed somebody would pick Patrick.
Yeah.
I was starting to get nervous. So thank you, Steven.
No, again, low hanging fruit probably tastes the best, so I'll go ahead and take it. I mean, coming off of a Super Bowl, Super Bowl MVP season, and I mean, if we're just counting 2020, he won the Super Bowl now, and he's only lost one game so far this season.
Yep.
If you combine his numbers between the end of last season and this season, he's completed 67% of his passes. He's thrown for almost 8,500 yards, 62 touchdowns, 10 interceptions.
Is it 85?
And a quarter yards per game, 303 yards, and has a quarterback rating of 108.1. So, I mean, he's doing pretty well, even still in the second half of this 2020 season. Only one loss this season. Looks to be the odds-on favorite again to get, maybe even another MVP, maybe a Super Bowl MVP again and another MVP. So, I mean, this young man, this is his fourth year, and third and a half, really.
Third year playing.
You're right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and this guy is just we're gonna start getting in that LeBron category where people are just and Jordan, right? Like people are gonna get so tired of giving him all these awards that they're gonna have to give out consolation prizes to everybody else. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is having a phenomenal season, but I mean, come on, like he's not Patrick Mahomes. We're gonna start looking at reasons to not give it to him as opposed to just recognizing that he is the best player right now in the NFL. Not even close. And there's the argument that they're not even trying, that are they really interested in playing football? Like we're starting to already get these conversations. And does Mahomes get bored with having a lead? Does he like the challenge of coming from behind in football games? Now, like he's starting to get into like this rarefied air of like he's just toying with the game, like he just bends the game to his will. And again, like this, he's still on his rookie scale contract. Not to mention, too, like how much better does it get to making $500 million?
He's had a really good 20. I believe I think he has a child on the way too. So
this dude is just he wins at everything. And by all accounts, what you hear, he's just an absolute sweetheart too, right? Like he, I read a report that he went to like a pizza place with his, I don't know if they're engaged or married or whatever. I know that they're either engaged or married, but he and his significant other, they went and had pizza and nobody bothered him when he went out, and he was like very appreciative of that he got to go out and have a meal like a regular person and paid for everybody's meal at the restaurant, right? So like you just love stories like this where this guy, he keeps his nose clean, he literally cares about all of his teammates. Everybody gets the success they want. I'm sure Andy Reid is like his biggest fan because the narrative on Andy Reid has changed this past season as well. So he just does so much great things for the game of football. And it's hard for me to pick any, but I mean, all these other nominations were great. I really appreciated the Mookie Betts. I wasn't expecting to hear that name.
Yeah.
And Breonna Stewart again was another great one as well. But I mean, Patrick Mahomes was pretty easy for me to pick.
It's kind of his year. I'm glad you brought him up. You said all the good things I want to say about him. He's so much fun to watch, and he's so good. I'm with you. The only thing you can do if you're like, you just have to make up stuff to not root for him or think that he's good. Like now I think LeBron's a good correlation. You just have to start making up things about him that aren't good. Like I don't know what you can find. Like he's got the best arm, he's got the best vision. His teammates seem to love him.
He talks like Kermit the Frog. That's the worst thing you can say about the guy.
No, I love it. I love this generation of quarterbacks. Last year, I would have probably given this to Lamar Jackson for the same reasons. Just the energy that he brings. That is so important in sports. That like I always try to look at it, and it's probably because like I'm older and I've raised a son, and I raised my son on sports, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. I did. That was our common bond, and so guys like him are guys that like. I would point out like, this is the guy, gravitate to this guy. This is, you know what I mean? So like, that's very important to me that a kid can watch a highlight of Patrick.
Influential. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's just me though. Cause I like sports, and I think that's how we keep it going and keep it positive. I've never understood the whole negative, connotation. Well, he makes $500 million. Like, no, he makes $500 million because how he plays the game. They didn't give that to him first, and then he started playing. So another honorable mention I had, who's having a really good 2020. It's hard to forget, the playoffs, but Derrick Henry's had a pretty good 2020 for a player. Like I was one that after the playoffs, he had a great playoff run last year, but me, I hate running backs. And I was one that I was like, go ahead, give him all the money or whatever. And then week 8, like, who's your backup? No, Henry is. I
had Joe.
Great. Like, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I had Joe Burrow on my list too. I mean, you're talking about one of, if not the best collegiate seasons in football history too. Like I almost went with Joe Burrow, and he's looking pretty good up until his recent injury. Right, he was looking pretty good in the NFL. His rookie season.
Yeah, he had a great 20. You guys have any other guys you want to mention before we move on?
Or gals?
I think everybody tucked everybody.
Yeah.
I got a list too, and whoever doesn't mention what I mentioned.
I'll quick mention Bam really fast, just for a similar thing.
Yeah, get out of here.
No, because he made the All-Star team, had a great playoff run, and he just got paid his max contract, so he kind of deserves it. Because a lot of people had no idea what he was going to be out of.
A lot of people did those same things, man. Come on now.
I think, there's a lot of guys in the NBA because the bubble was so successful. I'll really just say everybody in the bubble. I mean, Murray, Booker, Tatum, everybody that got showcased in the bubble that maybe, weren't a household name. Like, I don't think it could have went better for any of the young guys.
No.
I think the NBA bubble just as a whole was just a giant success in 2020 for considering everything. So, all right, we'll move on here. This one shouldn't be too bad. It was a little tough. So we went with your best sports moment of 2020.
Do you mind if I hop in first, since I already kind of touched on mine, Jeff?
Yeah. No, go ahead.
All right, yeah, I just wanted to bring up again, the Kobe Bryant Memorial. I know that we wanted to keep this show happy, and I do feel like the memorial was happy. We got to celebrate, in the midst of it's like a phoenix, right? Out of the ashes, beauty was born from that. We got to hear Michael Jordan say nothing but amazing things coming off of what we're gonna see with the Last Dance, when he looked at Kobe Bryant and was like, hey, this kid's going to be special. And Michael said nothing but amazing things about Kobe. Shaq, who, they had a on and off again relationship, throughout Kobe's life. And Shaq came in and, he was Shaq, he made everybody laugh too, but, and celebrating a life, right? Instead of just being down about it, and everything that he gave. Jelani, you're bringing up a lot about women's sports. I mean, talk about a guy stepping out of, his responsibility and taking responsibility for something else, right? How active he was with the WNBA, how active he was with that next generation of women's sports. Alicia Keys, Boys to Men, a whole bunch of just really prominent figures came out and just celebrated the life of Kobe Bryant. For anybody who doesn't know, like my podcast story, I was podcasting for a little bit. And when Kobe Bryant passed away, I obviously never met him, never knew him, but he impacted my life. And whenever I was sitting down doing my podcast one day, and it was before anybody even knew that I was like podcasting. I just kind of did it in a hole in the wall. Mm-hmm. And when he had passed away, I was just thinking about him. I was reflecting on him and the Mamba mentality. And I was like, man, if Kobe Bryant, for whatever reason, if he did know me and he knew that I was podcasting, but not putting my 100% out there and putting myself out there, like he would, put a foot up my, what, and through that, he kind of inspired me even through the loss of his life to spread my wings a little bit. So there was a lot of good that came out of a terrible situation.
Yeah, and it should have. Yeah, he was that was a life that should have been celebrated, a career that should have been celebrated. Yeah, absolutely. You can't talk about 2020 in sports and not talk about Kobe for sure. Yeah, Jared, best moment.
So I have like a little one just pertaining to like game action itself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But when like I mentioned earlier, Steven Stamkos, the Tampa Bay Lightning's captain, he was hurt the entire playoffs. He got hurt at, I believe it was the beginning of 2020 while the regular season was still going on. COVID happens, the playoffs begin. He's out the entire playoffs until the Stanley Cup Finals. Game 3, gets on the ice, gets the puck, scores a goal, puts the team up early. He left the game after the first period, couldn't play the rest of the finals. His goal makes a difference in them winning, and they, of course, end up winning the cup. It was like one of those moments in sports where it's like the leader or captain, where even if they weren't there physically, like you feel the essence of them for the team. And in hockey especially, like the captain being there even for a moment means more than anything else. So for him to do that was big. That was my sport moment. I think my kind of outside sports moment, and Chris touched on it a little bit when he was talking about LeBron earlier, but the athletes not being scared to use their voices to me, I think was a big thing. I remember this was back when I was in college. I had to write a paper for a media analysis class, and I based mine solely on the idea of athletes beginning to find their voices. And I found a term that was mainly used back then in the 60s with Muhammad Ali and Jim Brown and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar called the athlete activist. And I think 2020 kind of saw a rebirth in athletes not being scared to use their voices. Because at the end of the day, Jeff, like you said, like these guys get criticized for being so good at what they do that they're paid a lot. And people use that to disqualify them from even being allowed to have regular conversations about regular things as if they aren't people.
Basic human rights.
Exactly. And for them not to be scared, LeBron being one of the Sports Illustrated's People of the Year, 5 athletes being named as that for contributions they made socially, I think that was a big thing. I think there's a negative stigma for some reason sometimes when it comes to being an athlete. As very weird as that seems to me.
It's jealousy is what it is.
Yeah.
Well, it's the perception, right, that like they're not intelligent, right? And we see it with the one and done rule and things like I actually wrote on this a little bit too about the whole shut up and dribble thing. And like you'd be surprised how many athletes are actually more qualified than your average fan to be able to, like, Doc Rivers has a degree in political science. Like that's not something that gets talked about every time you watch, his team play, but like he legitimately knows a thing or two about politics. So when he speaks, like he actually knows a little bit about what he's talking about. And a whole bunch of other players have similar type of, qualifications or credentials, if you will.
Yeah. So those guys just deserve a shout out real quick because it's not easy for them. They're already criticized for how they play, and for them to say, "All right, we're going to make sure we use our voices here because we can make a difference." That takes a lot because there are a lot of regular human beings that don't show that kind of compassion and care about topics. So like the athletes deserved a lot of credit for using their voices in 2020.
Right. And to touch on that, one more thing, the money is actually factors in the other way to me. They've got way more to risk than I do as a carpenter. Like I can really go off on a limb and I'm only losing so much. You know what I mean? Like, yes, they make a ton of money. LeBron has all this, but they also, like, if a sponsor or something gets taken away from them, it's a huge risk. And I don't know. I'm just with you. I think that I was proud of how they handled the summer and the tough times and everything. So,
well, they can't go out and get a regular job, right? Like that's another thing people don't realize. Like these dudes only can work, up until like they're 40 years old, and then they have to have made enough money to sustain them and their family for the rest of their lives. Like they can't go and get a job at, a Home Depot as a manager or what. Like
yeah.
they can't live that type of life when they're done at 40 years old. They still got 60 more years that they got to be able to live on.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we have to listen to some of them talk.
Yeah.
Someone could probably just retire. All right, Chris, what was your moment of 2020? Was it the draft? Was it the NBA draft?
Oh man, the draft stuff. That was crazy. But there's sports moments like obviously it's kind of hard to talk 2020 without the unfortunate passing of Kobe Bryant. That was. I mean, I remember where I was. I remember I found out via a wrestling chat room, like out of all places. Like because if you're a wrestling fan, that day was the Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
So I was in the wrestling chat. I was trying to figure out what's going on. I heard Edge was coming back, so I was trying to see if Edge was coming back, and then someone posted, "Hey, Kobe died." I was like, "Come on, it's wrestling, so people always post fake stuff." So I assumed it was fake. Then they directed me right to TMZ's official website.
Oh yeah.
I was like, uh-oh.
My mom got a hold of me
Twitter,
at church, man.
then I went to Twitter and I started seeing Kobe trending, and it starting, news places started slowly saying that an accident happened and it could possibly be Kobe. So I mean that's tragic, and just like everything that went on with the social justice movement and players just being more empowered and having voice, like you mentioned before, that people, shut up and dribble. Like we've heard that, right? We how crazy does that sound? Simply because an athlete makes a certain amount of money, that they have no say. Like whatever they say is invalid, which is I think is idiotic, because a lot of these guys, like LeBron James, come from single parent homes and living in the inner cities where if he didn't make it in basketball, there's not a lot of promise, and he was able to live his dream out and get his family out of there and live the dream. Look, he's still
And
playing
help others.
and help others on the way. This guy has built a school. The I promise, like he's done charity up to great. Like, even the decision, people criticize the decision. He raised $3 million for the Boys and Girls Club.
Right.
So yes, it may have not looked, it's not the way people may have wanted, but guess what? He did his money for something good. So all that, and so to me, those things, were important. But can I put up a personal thing?
Absolutely.
I mentioned a personal thing. Just being able to network and grow and network with people like you guys. Like this doesn't happen without, you guys help and everything. Like to me, that's important too. Like 2020, yes, it was a tough year for everyone, right? We're dealing with a pandemic. We're dealing with, people dying around us, people very sick, and, people losing businesses. And, just the fact that, I'm able to network with guys like you and create something pretty cool. And, everyone's doing great with their shows and all that. To me, that's pretty cool that, we were able to we're all from different parts of the country, and be able to interact and have, and all that good stuff. To me, if there's any positive thing that can come out of 2020 is just the relationships that I've been able to come out with, and like I said, networking with guys like you, dope people, and who provide dope content and are just good people, And so to me, that trumps everything else, with sports and all that. To me, is that everyone looking out for each other, especially in our world, in our chat room and all that, where we all look out for each other. So we got to be able to. A lot more people need to be able to look out for each other and watch out for each other. So that's my
No, I hear that, man. I think we all
Top that, Jelani.
I think we all support that.
I'm
I'm gonna bring it back.
There's no way.
What's your moment of 2020?
Yeah, man, it's definitely gonna be hard to talk. Like I said, I guess to speak to what Chris just said real quick is like, yeah, I'm really happy. Like you said, this is one of the positive sides of 2020. You know, being able to find you guys. I think Chris was like my third interview. Jeff helped me so much behind the scenes.
And that's how I heard it. I said, like, Chris is on there, this guy, and then I
met Jelani because Chris invited me to like come on.
We did an all-time draft
critique,
together.
an all-time draft, and me and Jelani just were breaking down the rosters together, and we had just met. Like that was pretty dope.
Exactly, and then Jerry's
that's like with Jeff. Jeff followed my show, and he would comment on my stuff, and I'm like, I got a fan in Ohio. Like that's crazy. Like people there's people that are not like family that like my stuff, and I always thought that was cool. So I always loved Jeff.
Like I said, everybody's been amazing. Like I said, Jerry, even in the chat, you know, he brings so much from all different aspects of sports. I love his takes.
Yeah, Jerry always steals the show, man.
Yeah, and
people may not know, but like Jerry is like very an integral part to our chat and has like so much that he doesn't like really put out. He's like an evil sports genius in our chat.
Very much so.
Well, you know what? I like that because I'm doing the superhero characters, so now I like where we're going with that. So
he could be like Norman Osborn, you know.
What was your what was like an on the court moment, Jelani? Or on the court or on the field or whatever.
Yeah, my fault. So yeah, mine.
I know you're you know, you've talked a lot about the most important things to you are the social, you know, justice and things like that, and that's what we respect about you. I'm curious,
hey guys, I'm gonna have to bounce. I'm sorry.
All right, Steven, be careful, man. Thanks for coming on.
Take care, Steven.
So, what was it? Anything you on the court or on the field or whatever that stood out?
I guess if I'm going with on the field wise, I'm gonna have to go. I mean, something recent. I guess like I said, staying on brand. Sarah Fuller, just coming off of Vanderbilt soccer. You know, SEC championship. Yeah, and then you know, a few days later, she's kicking for Vandy.
Was cool, man.
Yeah, definitely cool.
That was awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool to see. And like I said, even a week or two ago, been able to you know. She made an extra point for them as well. So, but overall, like I said, you guys kind of already spoke to it. But like I said, just other women, I just wanted to point out that, you know, just social activism, everything that they did this year, like Naomi Osaka. She's also going to be one of my fresh faces. But basically, you know, she won the U.S. Open, but she's real quiet. But I guess she won Sports Person of the Year for activism, you know, raising awareness for the Black communities. And, you know, I guess she's just learning, like, she's a young person in sports, but her voice really matters, especially for the up and coming generation.
We'll go into fresh faces, and we'll let you about her and explain that. But I think a lot of people like that got overlooked because I mean the U.S. Open was kind of weird, just like every other. 2020 was so odd, man. But it's great. I know that stuff means a lot to you.
Exactly. And Maya Moore also, of course, she sat out again, helping to free Jonathan Ayers, was able to free him, and then also married him. Natasha Cloud with the Mystics, and then Renee Montgomery, two big names, WNBA as well. They decided to sit out for the year, of course, to focus on racial injustice. So, just all
Maya
those.
Moore stuff is crazy, though.
Yeah,
she sacrificed her career for this guy who was wrongfully, you know, tried and convicted, and you know she stood for him, and then you know. And then she fell in love with him, and to me, that's a beautiful story. Really
she's such an impressive person, just in general, and I think that. But I think the combination of that, you know, she does something like that, and the sport continues to go on. I think that's what was so important about sports being played, because if sports don't come back, she still does that, but we don't know. Or everybody doesn't know. When I say we, I mean, you know, you guys know what I mean. So I think that's what was so important about sports coming back, when like it would have been easy, especially we talked about the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, we all remember that night. That could have been it, and they could have just been like, most of those players would be happier going home, seeing their family, you know, getting comfortable, and then just restarting in, you know, 2021 or whatever. But I think it's important that you keep playing, because then people like it just keeps it out there. So like I think the WNBA, the combination of the players that did what they did sitting out and the players that did what they did on the court was really important, you know, to everything, especially to like I didn't have a daughter or anything, but I would imagine that like girls, young women, across the country. Like that stuff means a little bit more, and I think it's really important. I assume that Sarah Fuller, you touched on it. I mean, I think that would be huge, to not just like football fans, but girls, young women, things like that. You know what I mean? Because I've been in a football locker room, and it like we all think that like, yeah, no problem, it was fine. But I've been in a football locker room, and that was not a place that is a conducive environment to a woman to flourish in that sport. That's just the honesty of it. Like what we see on the field, like the players do have their back, but like nobody's been in one of them locker rooms without a woman around. They are not. It is not supportive, and I hope that's getting better. And I think that was awesome. So,
it's the year of the woman. It's definitely the year of the woman.
Yeah, most of them are. Most of them are, man.
Usually is, but this year especially.
So you know what? We'll do our fresh faces. We'll go back to Jelani, and we'll let him continue on that, and he can tell us a little bit about his fresh faces of 2020.
Yeah. Like I said, she's won 3 Grand Slam titles. 22 years old. Has been number 1 ranked in the world. It's ridiculous. Like I said, her I guess ascension to the tennis world, kind of almost being the next one in line after Serena Williams. There's another young tennis star too. I forgot her name, but she's like 16, 17 years old as well. Like it's just tennis in general for young, I guess, African-American girls. I guess they saw Serena and it's kind of just taking off from there.
I was going to ask you that. I mean, this has to be a result of the Williams sisters, right? I mean,
I would think so.
I shouldn't say a result. That sounds rude, but like that had to have helped.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's awesome. I mean, it's like, not to go on a different podcast, but I have Serena Williams is one of my top, like way up there, maybe top 5, maybe top 3 American athletes that ever lived. I could do a whole show on that sometime about like how I worship Serena Williams and everything she's done. So, there has to be a factor in it.
Most definitely.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So Chris, fresh face of 2020.
Yeah, I'm gonna Sarah Fuller. She's the MVP for me. She's my MVP. Like, it's crazy when you get a daughter, and I had my daughter in last September, and it just changes everything and the way I would just appreciate it. It just, and like Kobe, what he was doing with the WNBA and that movement with Gianna, like the way he put respect on the WNBA when people were real disrespecting it. And it felt like, and that's what we see with the WNBA. It's starting to get more respect, from a lot of casual people. Like people are really respecting WNBA, and like this is what Sarah Fuller was able to do. She was the first female person to play in a Power 5 game. Like it's unbelievable what she's able to do, and just like it shows you that it doesn't matter. Just because it's a male-dominated sport, or as we've seen in sports a lot, everything gets very male-dominated. Where even in our field, doing sports media and stuff, like it's very male-dominated. But seeing women like have a voice and know that they know just as much as the men, like that's like it's crazy. Like when people disrespect females because because they didn't play in an NFL or whatever. Like I always thought that was crazy. Like But what was she able to do was free, and it's crazy. You see all the comments and all that, and it was just really disgusting seeing that. But she persevered through it. She just did what she had to do, and she's my MVP. She might be my MVP of the year because I could show my daughter this when she's old enough to know and be like, hey, you see that? See her? She kicked in a college football game.
Well, like
so.
3 days after winning the SEC title,
and like you can do that. Like that's not something crazy anymore. Like you can do that if you want to do that. You put your mind to it, you can do it. So it just to me, it's something that I'm going to show my daughter when she gets old enough and be like, okay, you do whatever you want, and that's truly a thing. You can do whatever you want. You could just like the men, you could do what they're doing. So put your mind to it. Sarah Fuller, that was to me was tremendous. I still get mad just looking at the comments, and you guys see comments. To me, a lot of comments were just so disrespectful. But like I said, she did her thing, and I'm so happy for her and her success because, like I said, it just gives females more power in an industry that's very male dominated. So she's my new face of the year.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say real quick on Sarah Fuller too, as far as the biggest argument, like that, I want to not taking into fact just the ridiculous people, but their biggest argument was, quote unquote, like she didn't earn it. You know what I mean? Like she was given the spot. Let me tell you something. Anybody that follows college sports and they think that every player on that team earned their way there, here was my comment. Herb Street had kids play for Clemson. That's all I'm going to say about it. I'm just being honest. Like, no, like they can give it's not all even, and there's not a process. No, I stop with that. Like, if you think that every male that ever got a shot in college or pro sports, I bet like a lot of people in the 1940s and 50s would argue that like everybody didn't get a fair shot. So I don't want to hear that. Like, she got the call, she answered it. She's like, yeah, I'll do it. And it was awesome. There's no downside to it. So
exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Jerg, who was your face, man?
Real quick to kind of like conclude on the point that you were just talking about, Jeff, like Sarah Fuller was asked to do that.
Exactly.
And it wasn't a thing where it's like, and you mentioned like people that follow collegiate sports, Vanderbilt doesn't have a men's soccer team either. So, right. Or at least like their men's soccer team wasn't playing. I'm not a Vanderbilt Commodore. I apologize to all the Commodores out there.
The Commodores are going to get mad at you at this one.
Hey, Skip Bayless, come at me. Go ahead. But like she was asked to do this. That was the biggest thing for me. Like a lot of people were saying like this was some sort of like, no, they needed a kicker and she was asked to do it for good reason. You assume she's pretty good on that team too.
Yeah.
So, and like you said, Jeff, like John Calipari had his son play with him in Kentucky, and he transferred. And like, come on, like let's stop acting like every single person in there earned their spot. Like, seriously,
exactly. We've seen that a lot with coaches' kids in college. You know, wait,
exactly.
Why is he on the team? He's not any good. Like, and it's like just because he's the kid's, fault.
Right?
It's crazy.
So that's I don't want to hear that.
Yeah. So my fresh faces for 2020. I'm going back to hockey because like that's what we want. This is essentially the sport that I'm pushing.
Do you like hockey?
I'll have you know.
I couldn't tell at all.
That's a good one. So for hockey, I have a trio of young defensemen who became stars in the NHL this season. I'll run through them really fast. So Cale Makar on the Colorado Avalanche. 50 points his rookie season, 15 points in the playoffs, second most by a rookie defenseman in a playoff run all time, one Rookie of the Year. Quinn Hughes, Vancouver Canucks, 16 points in the playoffs. He's the only person above Cale Makar. So in the same postseason in the NHL, we got the two best performances from rookie defensemen all time. And I didn't check the voting, but I'm fairly certain that he was second behind Cale for Rookie of the Year voting this past season. And also most power play points for Canucks rookie in team history. So that kid's going to be good. By the way, they're rookies.
Yeah.
Bear that in mind. And the last kid, arguably, if you think the first two are good, this guy may be the best of the bunch. Miro Heiskanen on the Dallas Stars. 26 points in the Dallas Stars playoff run. That is the fourth most by a defenseman in NHL playoff history. The three guys above him all won the award as best defenseman in the NHL at some point in their careers. All of them won a Stanley Cup, and all of them are Hall of Famers. Like, these are three guys who broke out on the scene as stars to superstars in 2020. And for the NHL, like, one thing that I've always personally wanted, and I've always said the NHL I wish they would do better, is promote the guys that are becoming stars. Like, that's my main thing. Like Steve and Chris.
Agree.
Yeah, like Steve and Chris, like they've told me, like, you guys know the big names. I don't need to tell people how good a Crosby or an Ovechkin is.
Exactly.
You guys already know how good they are. But it's these new guys that are coming up that they need the attention. And the NHL's always had like amazing defensemen. And these three guys are about to lead an entire generation of defensemen and kind of the new era of defense where your top defenseman is going to be an offensive stud and you can trust him out there as a defensively sound player. You know, there's a lot of guys that can only play one part of the game really well. Mm-hmm. The new wave in the NHL is you get a guy who he can put up points for you on the blue line and he can potentially help shut down the offense of the other team. And these are arguably the three best young defensemen in the game, where in 3 to 5 years, if you're looking at a top 5 listed defenseman, all three of them are going to be on there without question.
And in hockey, how old are they? Like a lot of them still just come out of high school and stuff, right?
They're all 22 or younger. I think maybe Miro may have turned 23. I have to double check that, but they're all 22 or younger. Cale and Quinn both finishing up their rookie seasons. Quinn Hughes, by the way, has a brother who's in the NHL too, Jack Hughes. So the Hughes family has some young guns in the league. Cale, again, I'm not going to go into it, maybe another time, but Cale had a wild story back in 2019 regarding his coming into the NHL. I don't want to get too into it because I don't want to push us too long, but he had a nice little story. And then Miro on the Dallas Stars, again, hockey in Texas, that may not seem to cross for a lot of people, but the Dallas Stars are a good team. What I really love the most, and I'll finish it off here, is that all three of these teams in the next few years have Stanley Cup potential. The Dallas Stars. Yes, the Dallas Stars are in the middle of their the Dallas Stars are in the middle of their championship window right now. The Avalanche have dynasty potential written all over them, and the Vancouver Canucks, kind of like how we've spoken, Jeff, about like how the Dolphins this year are 1 year ahead of their rebuild. That was the Canucks this past season. They shocked a lot of people, including myself, of how advanced they were. And these three guys, you're going to hear their names a lot if you follow hockey in any way for a long time.
And I think that is like you're right. We could do a whole show on like how they kind of. I remember in the 90s when the hockey had a huge boom here, like in America, the Midwest, like it was giant. And the younger stars were like, I remember like Jaromir Jagr, like when he was just a kid, like that was a big deal. Him and Lemieux and that gang, and it seemed like, and then things have changed now. A lot of that's out of our hands because it's television contracts, it's sponsorships, it's blah 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 blah. You know, like they pick and choose. So, but you're right, that is something that like somebody like me needs to know is like the younger guys, and that's what I'm getting ready to speak on. My fresh face is actually just the young faces of the NBA. John Morant. I know Steven was going to talk about John Morant.
Yeah, me too.
You know, Booker, Murray, all these guys, and they got showcased, and everybody got to see like how great they were. There's been this aura or whatever for the last like 20 years, like 20 some years, like every now and then, like they will accept a guy like a Kobe or somebody like that. Like, oh no, this guy's going to be great. Instead of what we keep denying, there's so much talent in the NBA right now. Like you guys know, like you're NBA guys, you know that most of these guys would have scored 50, 30 years ago. Like the talent is so to get to see them on a big stage. Like I think Booker, like he had I don't know if anybody had a better bubble than him because he got to get in like a comet and get out. No, he didn't get exposed. Guys like even Tatum, he's been around a little bit, but like most people didn't really like know him. They know, they still know LeBron, they know Durant, Giannis. But I think that the young guys in the NBA really just had a fantastic 2020. And there's so many teams now that I look at and wonder what they do every night outside of Milwaukee, LA. I don't even know. Like if we went back to April or I guess March, it was like, what are Milwaukee and LA going to do? Like just to the general fan, not. And then now I'm like, man, how Denver do? Like, are they following this up? How's Phoenix going to do? Like, and now it's important to me. Like, like Jamal Murray is like, was that real? Like, is Jamal Murray going to be that good for, an 80 game season or 70 game season whenever they get? So my fresh face was just the face of and you can't talk enough about Luka. I made this whole show without bringing up Luka. He had one of the best moments. I thought his game winner in the bubble was one of the best moments I saw. Like his talent level, just how he gets people to talk about, to watch the game. You know what I mean? Like Jerg talked about, we're talking about the Dallas Mavericks. We're not talking about, the Knicks, the Bulls, the Lakers, but people gravitate to like, we don't know why we got to watch this guy play, but while you're watching him play, somebody else is playing, and and so on and so forth. And I think that that's what the bubble. So like just the young guys in the NBA, man, like they won 2020 as far as because like everybody watches football, but I really was impressed by what I saw from them. So So we'll move on here. It's the last thing. I don't actually personally have a nominee here. I know you guys have a couple. Chris, I'm gonna let you go last. You've got the tweet of the year. Jelani brought up just some kind of like tweets, or it doesn't have to be a tweet or whatever. Just things you heard or people said or whatever in 2020. Jelani, do you have a nominee for a big tweet or anything in 2020?
Yeah, so I mean, this was the one I just brought up because I was just thinking about it, and actually, obviously, it was low. I know Steven said he's like, I'm not even gonna try to look. Like, it's actually like obviously harder than you would think because it's just so much.
There's so
like people tweet. There's people that tweet like 100.
I got 17
like it's ridiculous.
tweets, and I'm not even good.
Yeah, but like I basically there's not like one specific. Well, there is one that is one specific one, but the other ones are kind of like sheltered or not sheltered, but like it's a series of tweets. Like the first one. Obviously, LeBron tweeted out when Biden won the election, he photoshopped, his head and then Donald Trump's head and, him blocking, making basically his famous block on Iguodala, got Biden's head on him.
I got
and then Donald Trump on Iguodala. So,
LeBron did that.
Yeah, and it was like got like 1.1 million retweets or something like that. So yeah, that was a pretty big one. Yeah, LeBron doing that Photoshop. It was pretty cool. And then the other two I had around the NFL draft. I don't know if anybody really remembered, but there was like two moments. Everybody, obviously, it was a virtual NFL draft. It was the first one that they ever had, but it was two black moms that were, got kind of not really famous, but it was like pretty funny. CeeDee Lamb's mom, because CeeDee Lamb took the phone out of his girlfriend's hand, and then the mom was and then and then the other one was I think Isaiah Wilson. Yeah, that was my favorite one, but the other one was Isaiah Wilson. His girlfriend was hugging him really, really tight, and the mom came over, like you could see her walking up, and it's like what, and like had to like literally like rip her off of him, like, and it's just like they caught it all like live.
I'm so happy you brought that up because that was hysterical.
Oh my god,
and that was like, which black mom are you, or which mom are you, like. So that was another big one, hilarious. And my last one is just, of course, just Dame and CJ going after the Clippers. After they lost. What Damian said. I think he said he added Pat Bev. He was like, hey, we haven't made plans yet or whatever. You're welcome to come and join us in Cancun. Like both him and CJ just kept going back. Somebody tagged Dame, was like, he was like, it was that a good shot, and then PG hitting the side of the backboard. He said, "Look good to me." Just like that whole like interchange was definitely hilarious for me. So those are my three. I know we were supposed to pick one, but that was my three for the year.
No, you didn't have to pick. You can do whatever you want, man. Jurg, I know you was going to send me. I might have missed it. What you got? Anything for 2020?
So I'm going back to old reliable again for me. People are going to be so sick of me by the end of this with
no, not at all.
Hockey I bring up. I know, no, you guys won't, but like people that watch it, like, all right, enough with this guy in hockey. We get it, but. I've got
a lot of hockey fans in my area. We're a Blue Jackets fan base. You'd be surprised.
So mine was more of like a nice like kind of remind. Like I think with how much we talked about him in this show, like with Kobe's passing, I think one thing that and 2020 has taught all of us, it's like how to appreciate life more. And it was late December 2019, I believe, when NHL player Oscar Lindblom got diagnosed with form of cancer. I think it was I forget it was Ewing's something. I forget the full name of it. I think Ewing sarcoma, something around those terms, but he was diagnosed with it. And in the sports communities, we've spoken about this before. The sports communities are family. So when one of their guys goes down with something that serious, when a guy gets diagnosed, like in the NFL with Coach Ron Rivera, like their team and then the league comes to them like for support. He was cleared, and I think just recently the day passed where over a year ago is when he was diagnosed, and now him being free of it is a big thing. And the tweet September 3rd when the Flyers Twitter said he's in, welcome back at Oscar Lindblom, just him, less than a year after being diagnosed, him coming back to play a big-time playoff game in the bubble for the team. It was just one of those nice little moments where, like, you wish there was a crowd there. You wish they could have done that crowd because if there's one thing hockey, like all sports fans, but like in hockey, I've noticed this trend. Like when a guy comes back from something that's serious, like it doesn't matter if it's an away arena. He will be everyone's favorite player that night. And him coming back, the Flyers winning that game and forcing a Game 7 in their second round series. Like I mentioned before, emotional lifts. Like when you get that kind of surge of emotion from one of your teammates and like the relief that they're fine, that's just one of those things. So and that's how I actually figured out that he was cancer free. Like their official Twitter, when I saw that tweet, it was like that was like for me again, like a guy who follows hockey, like to hear, remember when someone from hockey, when everything's doing fine, it's a blessing for everyone. So that was one of those feel good moments. And I think in 2020, in a year where it was really tough to get those kind of feel good moments, they were rare. But when you had them, like you had to run with them because
we'll take as many as we can get 2020. And I get what you're saying. Like I'm the same way as a football fan. Like I don't care how. Just let's bring up like the Dak Prescott was a great example. Like everybody, I hate quote unquote hate the Cowboys. Everybody roots against.
I hate the Cowboys.
Well, we always call it sports hate or whatever. Some people get sensitive about the word hate, but but anyway, just to be clear, like I want them all to be healthy and lose. That's what I would say. But
100% right.
Yeah.
You want them. You hate the team, but Dak Prescott's injury, no one rooted for him.
Yeah, as soon as he got hurt, like everybody immediately was like, man, that stinks, like the other players, everything. So, to touch on that, you're exactly right about that. Like and then Alex Smith coming back this year. We should probably bring that up because that's a great story for 2020, what that guy went through. I almost had to go to the ER just looking at the picture of his leg. Like that, I could not believe that was attached to a human. Him coming back and playing pretty good, and he might get a shot in the playoffs. Things like that. I mean, those are feel good stories of 2020 to where the outcome didn't matter as much as the moment. So that's a good one to bring up, Jurg. So we're gonna let Chris finish it off here. I kind of know what his is, so I think this is appropriate. And then go ahead, man.
Yeah, so the tweet for me that stood out, like I don't really remember tweets, exact same, but this tweet, obviously, it hits the feels, and I don't want it to be sad, but it's hard, like I said, it's hard to talk 2020 without talking about Kobe, and just the tragic loss. Like it still doesn't feel real at all. Like it's hard talking to him in the past tense, like Kobe, like it still doesn't feel right, but and it's crazy we're approaching, the year anniversary, which is kind of crazy too. But his last tweet, and if you go to his Twitter page now, everything's pretty wiped out. So like, I think his last tweet right now is from 2014, but his last official tweet, on the planet was to LeBron James when LeBron James passed him on the all-time points list. And I quote the tweet, continuing to move the game forward at King James. Much respect, my brother. And he had the, muscle emoji and then hashtag 33644. And to me, that's going to stay in my brain for as long as it, like I said, I don't remember tweet. I barely remember what I tweet. And so to me, I always, it's crazy. I don't know if you guys do this, but I tend to go to Kobe's page from once in a while on his his last Instagram page is the same thing too, similar. And it's like I just go to his page and just look at his stuff because it's still surreal that he's gone. But to me, that tweet is gonna stay with me. And that's the tweet I'm gonna remember most from 2020 is that tweet because it's gonna be engraved in my brain for as long as I live.
Well, I think that says a lot about, the type of athlete Kobe was, the type of athlete LeBron is. Like it says so much about Kobe that he was perceived as, when he was playing, he was perceived as not petty is not the word, but like always like had a chip or always took everything personal. But that was just how he was. But he was very like secure and comfortable and aware of who he was as a player. He did not. He could have easily hated on LeBron James going to LA. He could have easily been against that because, why would you bring, somebody who's going to finish like on the, the fake Mount Rushmore is going to finish ahead of him, whether he deserves it or not. I'm just, it's going to be Jordan, LeBron, Kobe, whatever. But but he would totally embraced it. You know what I mean? And things like that that's very important. And it also says something about LeBron, the fact that Kobe embraced him that way. Like, what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, so like it says a lot about, both players and the type of the people that they are off the court. And I think that like what 2020, like as far as meant to me with Kobe, is it like, you got to learn more about the person, behind the player. I grew up, not grew up, I'm the same age, but watching, and like I didn't know what kind of person he was. And there was a time to where I was negative on Kobe. I mean, he went through we all know the rough patches.
Oh, yeah.
And so like, but then he got through that. But things like that, Chris, that you talk about are like, wow, that's who he was. You know what I mean? So, and that's why we talked about earlier with Steve, and that's why we celebrated his life when it was over. Like by the time it was said and done, he wasn't like in a redemption story. He just revealed who he was, as a human being. And, it's only a tweet, but it says a lot, about the whole situation and about him. So I think that's an appropriate one to end the show on. So I think what we decided here, gentlemen, is that 2020, as insane, crazy, mad, difficult, and everything that it was a surprisingly better sports year, for like fans of the games than we think. You know what I mean? Like I think we'll look back at these teams like Tampa Bay, the Lakers, what the Dodgers did. We'll look back at the difficulties, that they dealt with, and we understand they're not the real world difficulties, but these people do have families. I mean, we could talk about Karl Anthony Towns. Like this is real stuff that these guys have had to deal with. And also like probably my moment of 2020 is honestly when the NBA came back, because even though we all knew sports were coming back, they were gone, guys. Sports were gone. We weren't guaranteed it. And I can remember that first night watching the Clippers and, the Lakers, and there was the game winning layup and all that, and thinking like, it was just one of the better moments of the year to like some sort of normalcy, some sort of distraction, in my life. And so that's kind of that'll just always stay. When I think 2020, I will always think about that, like the athletes and the sports, the teams, the owners, everybody getting together and figuring out a way to put a product out there for us, good, bad, or indifferent, whatever the motives are. I don't care. I will be crying in a week from now when Ohio State loses by 40 to Clemson. It was better than canceling the season. I'm just being honest. Like, I'm not going to say that then. My first tweet is going to be, should have just canceled the season. I'm not going to mean it. I'm glad the kids got to play. It's important to the players. It's important to the fans. It's important to everything. Sometimes sports just means more than people may think it does. So, all right, 2020 was good. And, Chris, you touched on it earlier, working with you guys, starting the network, the amazing shows we've done, the amazing content that we've put out. I think it's exceeded my expectations, tenfold since, what do we go back to, guys? Like September? We talking like September that we started all this. So, anybody listening, watching, go to offtheballnetwork.com. Look at all the content, watch, listen to everybody's shows. There's a ton of great stuff on there. And, 2021 is going to be awesome. Got a lot of new things coming, different shows coming. Everybody's got ideas and plans. And this thing is just in the, I mean, what do you think, Chris? I mean, we're still in the egg. The egg hadn't even hatched yet, man. Like it's, but things are going.
And that's what's crazy is that we're still growing, and yet there's people that reach out to me that are like, how are you doing it? And it's like, and they have like bigger budgets and all this, and it's just crazy what we have to. And like I said, it's just been a few months, and like 2021, we got even bigger and better ideas and more growth. And to me, I'm looking forward to that because that gets me excited. Every day to see the growth of what we're able to do, and like everyone putting in just crazy work and good content. So I'm looking forward to 2021 and just how off the ball network and seeing everyone's shows also, everyone that shows has grown too. Everyone's gotten better as hosts and, it's just dope seeing what we've been able to do, and everyone looks out for each other, like I said before. So big things are coming in 2021. So I'm excited about that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a blast. So Chris LeBron, Jurgen Coney, Jelani Brown. I can't thank you guys enough. This was fun. I think it turned out better than I thought it was going to be. As usual, we go. We go to the next level. You know what I mean? We go a different tier and everybody else, and kind of get under the kind of dig below the surface. And I think it really worked out today. And now looking back, I feel better about 2020 than I did when we started the show. I want everybody out there to have a happy holidays. Whatever you celebrating or supporting, or if it's just hanging out with your family, we love you all. We like everybody that supports us and listens. 2020 is going to be great. I want to tell you guys, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Whatever it is, just, if nothing else, just have a good weekend. You guys are awesome, and thanks for coming on. Thanks for watching, and we will see you guys soon.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Don't be racist.
Yes.
Yes. Don't be racist.